A reading from the Gospel of Luke. On that same day, 2 of the disciples were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days?" He asked them, "What things?" They replied, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who had said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see him." Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, "Stay with us, because it is almost evening, and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. "Are you the only stranger?" they say to their mysterious companion. Well, no, he's not a stranger. But somehow their eyes have been kept from recognizing him. There's a big challenge there about what we do with regard to our own eyes and what we do with regard to the eyes of those around us in this world. Those 2 hapless disciples, they don't recognize Jesus, and they have what must have been a walk of 3 or 4 hours talking with him. They don't get it until they offer Jesus hospitality, and he responds by breaking bread. When, of course, he does stay with them, just not in the way that they had imagined. And they have to be on their way anyway, because they, full of energy now, head back to Jerusalem, night time or not, and they start to proclaim the good news that the Lord has risen indeed. But at first, even in the presence of the risen Jesus, their eyes do not perceive him. And a big challenge for us, even us who are Christians, listening to a daily sermon on Easter Tuesday, we need to make sure that our eyes are always fully open to perceive the risen Christ among us, to perceive the risen Christ in our neighbours, whatever their status or circumstance or skin colour or creed or wealth or anything else might be. And we have to help the world see the life-changing, world-changing news of the resurrection and the presence of the risen Christ who does abide with us and is with us every time we and all other Christians gather to break bread. The resurrection has consequences. Good news has consequences. It has consequences throughout the pages of the gospel story. For Luke, whose wonderful story that is, the consequences continue in part 2, the Acts of the Apostles, as we see the world being changed in all sorts of ways, almost all of the known world at that time having an encounter with those who have seen and proclaimed the risen Christ. And now it is our turn. We need to make sure our eyes are fully and properly open, and that we can tell not the kind of bad news that Cleopas and his mate first start telling to Jesus himself. We need to make sure our eyes are open and our hearts and minds are full, so we can share good news and we can help change the world. Amen.